Welcome to the Committee for Oklahoma Prosperity podcast with Mike Mazie, CEO of Trinity Strategic Wealth, former state senator, and Oklahoma Secretary of Finance. Mike talks with public policy and industry leaders about needed transformative changes to make Oklahoma a top 10 state for people to live, work, and retire.
Hi, everyone. We're here today with our friend Treasurer Todd Russ. And once again, the Committee for Oklahoma Prosperity is happy to talk with an expert elected official who's working hard, because we know true reform-minded conservatives fix stuff and operate things in the best interests of our constituents. This is the time of year when we get some official numbers in terms of tax collection. So the Treasurer of Oklahoma is definitely the best guy to talk to. Todd Russ was formerly in the Oklahoma House of Representatives for 12 years, and he hails from Cordell, Oklahoma. And we're kind of wondering, Treasurer, how did Cordell fare in that Arctic unpleasant blast last week?
Well, thank you for that intro. I actually served 13 years. I ended up coming in on a special.
I forgot about that.
Turned me into the old guy pretty quick. But anyway, yeah, it was great serving in the legislature. And as far as, coming from Cordell, we're doing fantastic. We're 100 miles west of Oklahoma City and a little bit south, so we always need rain, but we got through the cold spell, and boy, it sure is nice to see the sunshine and warmer weather, and we're enjoying that.
Mm-hmm. Well, Oklahoma is very fortunate to have a banker at the helm of the Treasurer's office who understands finances. And in the finance world, for better or for worse, Treasurer Todd Russ is one of probably a handful of people, me being one of those financial nerds, that actually understands the finances of the state of Oklahoma in terms of all of the tax collections coming in, and being a member of the House for 13 years, all the expenditures going out. February is always an important month because we get the actual revenue projections from the Board of Equalization. So what did we learn from the BOE meeting just a few days ago? Was it last week or the week before?
Yeah, it was the week before, and actually it was telling of Oklahoma's strength and kind of what Oklahoma has going on. In December we give the estimate, and I came out with some numbers kind of based on the previous year, and kind of looking at that. When the feds came out with their tightening strategy and made all those rate increases, you and I both know the whole purpose was to tighten up the economy, slow it down, cut the money supply down, slow mortgage lending and those kinds of things, housing and all of those things. And it did. It started coming down slowly, but probably faster than I expected, honestly, looking back in the 90s and going back to years I've seen inflation. When I was a kid, they were 18-19% mortgage loans out there, and everyone broke. But the feds were tightening up pretty good, started bringing the economy back down. Nationally, if you compare Oklahoma to those numbers, we actually hung in there pretty good. We stayed pretty strong. Historically, we've been higher on the employment side of the numbers, and still are, and have maintained pretty good employment numbers. And we did draw back a little bit. I mean, that was what they were taking hacks at us to get us to slow down, and we felt that too. But actually, we didn't really back up that far relative to some of the others. And if you look at the state's overall condition on a 10, 15-year look back, we're still in a fantastic position. We certified about, actually, you asked for the numbers and what those numbers look like. We certified for the legislature to spend about 12 point, I think the number was like 12 point, looking for here, 12.36 billion.
12.2, 12.3.
Yeah, it was actually up a little bit more than I think what we told them in December, and they all felt like that it would be down. And the reason was, if you look at the 12-month averages, and historically the Treasury and the Tax Commission track those on a 12-month rolling average. But when I came in, I started tracking the month-to-month number as well. And it's very dynamic and telling, as you know. The 12-month average is really, really slow. It doesn't show what's happened in the last 3 months. If you look at the last 3 months, matter of fact, the 12-month average was actually showing it down about 0.3%, something like that. The actual number for the last 3 months showed the trend coming up. So if you didn't look at that number, you'd think it's going down, but it's actually been coming up, and they actually certified real close to what they had estimated in December. And that's a number for Oklahoma. That's historical ranges. When you and I were in there, you remember the years when we appropriated $6.9 billion, and now we're at over 12.
Yeah. So, Governor Stitt's first negotiated budget when I was Secretary of Finance was 7.9.
Yeah, it's
that was 6 years ago.
How far we've come. It's impressive.
Now, if I recall correctly, the projections for the fiscal year that we're actually in right now have turned out pretty decent, and we're not percentage-wise, too far off of what the Board of Equalization gave for the legislature to work off of for fiscal year 2025. And if I'm right about that, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, but if I'm right about that, it's kind of another indicator that except for these volatile time periods like the pandemic, generally these estimates have generally had or only been off by a variance a lot of times of 2.5% to 5%. And the professionals trying to provide these estimates are pretty thoughtful and conscientious. But there's a member of the Board of Equalization who wanted to kind of politicize the meeting and say he didn't trust the numbers, and so I'm not going to show up at the meeting. This was the Attorney General, of course, because I don't trust the numbers. What was your take on all that?
Yeah, I didn't see that coming, and I didn't really understand what he was trying to make a point about, because he was referring to the governor in some comments that didn't have anything to do really directly with the process. So, I hope that he got that all cleared up and figured out what he was looking for, because that's why we have people behind us crunching all of these numbers to bring them to the Board of Equalization and present their findings. We don't go, the governor and the executive constitutional members on the board don't go out and hustle up numbers. They bring those to us, and we review them and go over them with what they present to us. So you've got some pretty smart people in the back room. We've got an outside economist that's his professional, everyday career job to help with that final decision. And then we present they present it to us, and we look it over and certify it. So I wish he would have been there. I don't know why he didn't come, because we could have had a conversation on exactly what he was trying to get at, because I didn't understand what the points were, and I don't know that they were on the right page of how the process really goes.
Okay. But as a constitutional appointed member of the Board of Equalization, Treasurer Todd Russ, feels like these are, professionally realistic numbers for the House and the Senate, to work on their budget for fiscal year 2026.
Absolutely.
Would that be a correct statement?
Sure, absolutely. I hope they're conservative.
We'll get to that.
Yeah. But the process, I will say, I I've even mentioned it, and I've mentioned it in the past, and it's just an idea, but I would love to see us take our budget into a 5-year smoothing and use a 5-year average for the budget. And
Okay.
I don't know if that process is in Constitution. If it's not, we ought to look at changing that. And we ought to look at it anyway, because Oklahoma's had some really dramatic ups and downs in the past with the energy sector. Although that's an interesting conversation, because back when you probably first came in, and back in those days, the energy portion of our it was about maybe 25-30%. Well, it still is bigger of a number in the dollar side of it, but the percent side of it from the budget, it's between 8 and 11% now. So that's helped us with those real whiplash experiences from that industry. And I don't know if you was here when we finished the process to do I filed it as the energy stabilization plan. It ended up being the revenue stabilization plan when they got it passed.
Yeah, I was part of the Senate authorship working on that.
Yeah, that has been absolutely tremendous to help with those highs and lows. If they don't go in and monkey with that plan too much, it'll be a real saving factor for ups and down years, really the down years. And be interesting to see, and then that's a 5-year smoothing as well. And if we did the budget on a 5-year, it would take a lot of the extreme highs and lows out of it. And I think it'd be a great idea.
Good idea. You and I were part of an era, Treasurer Russ, when you were in the House and I was in the Senate, of conservative ways to fix things and do things more efficiently and more accountable to the taxpayers. Our mutual good friend, Randy Daniel and I, who was your predecessor as treasurer when he was in the House, one of those big reform items was fixing the pension systems. And, now they're healthy and the state is looked at with a better lens, if you will, from the rating agencies. I know your work and your various departments and divisions are part of that whole process. What do you think the state's overall financial condition is, and how do you think Standard & Poor's and some of these rating agencies are looking at us right now?
Well, our position's fantastic. We got probably at least $5 billion in some sort of reserve fund, some depending on the category you want to place it in. That's phenomenal. That's really great. They like that naturally. When you go to talk to the rating agencies, they love hearing the backup. And when I first came in, we started a new conversation with them. Actually got them to change our rating from a stable to a positive outlook the first year I think I was here. And then late last year, we're in February, but late last year, we actually got Moody's to bump us up to a AA+. So we've just got one more, the highest.
One more to go.
Yeah, and there's not. I mean, if you look
AAA on our way.
Yeah, getting there is, I don't know 3 states that have a AAA. So now we have some AAA ratings in our bond, and part of our bond portfolio, but the state's overall rating is still, it's phenomenal at an A+2, AA+. So those were really fun times to get to work through that process and see some results for the state of Oklahoma, and will help us a lot as we do infrastructure, roads and bridges.
Saves a lot of money when you have a higher credit rating, just like it does for an individual consumer.
That's right. And it takes a lot of money to do infrastructure. So we bond, those are some of the things that make sense to do bonds for, tax exempt bonds actually. And having those high ratings saves lots of money on lots of bonding opportunities. So that's been a good deal. The Oklahoma overall, I just can't brag on Oklahoma's economy and the people in the industry that we have, because when the Fed was hammering us trying to get our economies to slow down, and I don't blame them, they were doing their job, but Oklahoma stayed in the front of the pack And of course, the governor didn't shut us down during COVID and kept us with some momentum. So we busted out of the pack pretty early and stayed ahead. And our economy has really grown. I mean, just the numbers you and I shared about when we were here compared to now, and how well we've diversified the industry across Oklahoma. Man, I can't imagine when I was looking at a $6.9 billion appropriations year and thinking someday we'll be doing 12 and 13. Just absolutely remarkable. So yeah, I can't say enough about Oklahoma's economy right now.
Good, great news. Speaking of being, fiscally cautious or fiscally conservative, there's a lot of talk about tax cuts and various ideas floating around. The governor's proposed a 0.5% cut. When you and I were there were some warnings from some financial guys like us. Hey, if you cut taxes and raise spending and you give away lots of corporate, welfare, when the rough cycle does come, you're going to be left holding the bag. And sure enough, state government was left holding the bag for a while because we had these, $500 billion shortfalls. So, now it's a good season, got extra money, got some reserves. What do you think is going to percolate in the Capitol in terms of tax cuts? And, will they actually try the hard work of tax reform? So sure, lower the rates, but clean up some stuff so you broaden the base of taxpayers and can keep dealing with core services. What's your sort of assessment of what's being talked about at the Capitol?
Yeah, that is a long conversation, and you'd have to go back to when we went through those downturns, what caused that, what were some of the mechanisms we had in place that or didn't have in place that we have that we have in place today. We have a lot of things in place for safety, safety nets for Oklahoma that weren't there. I mentioned the energy stabilization. We have 2 or 3 of those. The rainy day fund has a pile of hundreds of millions of dollars in it. So we have a lot of things that are there for a safety net. And, I try not to be too political as the treasurer. I just try to do my job and not get in the arena of politics.
But you're the one who understands how the money works.
I said I try. Try not to get in that arena any more than I have to. But, coming from the past, I went through the hardest we've gone.
I know you did, because I was there too.
But if you are seeing the incremental increases in revenue that we're seeing, and we have the surpluses, I really think the governor does a great job of explaining the business side of how you cut income tax. And I'm not a zero tax guy. I think that you can't run government. I say that because libertarians are basically zero tax people. You can't run government without some tax. But I think fair tax is my goal, and I think income tax is the last thing that I want to tax somebody over. And we may never get completely away from income tax, but we do need to be able to compete in our region, and we're higher than several people in our region. And you say, well, then how are you going to reconcile the budget, though? How can you cut the budget if you cut income tax? Well, right now, I don't think we're going to have to cut the budget. And you know this too, looking back at every income tax that we cut, every time we cut income tax, the next year revenue came up. I mean, I don't know if that's coincidental or it is an economic philosophical subscription that they say you cut taxes and revenue will go up. And it has proven to do that. I'm not saying it couldn't, I'm not saying it's 100%, but at what point does our economy and our revenue get strong enough that we just keep letting the legislature spend it back into government? And because that's where it's going back into government. Fortunately, the revenues that we've had, the appropriations chairman didn't put all of that into ongoing agency and government programs and stuff that were ongoing obligations. A lot of that surplus above the 8.2 something that's the certified revenue went into one times. So the core services are funded at a number in the little above $8 billion. Mm-hmm. We'd have to take a catastrophic downfall to get into our core service cuts. So I don't see that happen. Hopefully never in you and I's lifetime at least, but unless somebody really screws something up bad. So if you're ever going to cut income tax, I don't know of a better time than right now, especially if you put some mechanisms in there that cautiously step it down and manage it as you go. But the key is to grow our economy. I mean, in you'll hear it at the national level soon. Any economist, any financial planner person is going to tell you, for us to make this work, we have to keep growing our economy. And we've done a phenomenal job. We got the wind to our backs. If we can keep on doing that, we can nip down some of these non-competitive areas that we're taxing on and have more people and more industry come into Oklahoma. And quite frankly, the working class is going to spend more of their money because they get to keep more of it to spend. So
that's what actually pays the bills.
That's right. That's right.
Now, the legislature appropriately gave your office, Treasurer Todd Russ, in your role, the responsibility to also kind of take a look at how our pension plans were operating and dealing with, some woke radical left interests from, my Wall Street world that was trying to, push energy, oil and gas companies to the sideline or curtail investment into oil and gas as a part of this bizarre effort called ESG, environmental social governance, criteria. And you personally put a lot of time and a lot of effort into making sure there was some accountability for some of these national firms that, if you're going to pound the table against oil and gas and energy, which is, the lifeblood of our economy in the United States. And, and Oklahoma is one of the top 10 producers in, oil and gas. Then we really don't want you, in our pension plans. And that's had some ups and downs and even some legal battles, and you were appropriately defending the state in terms of some legal challenges against that. And then once again, it's kind of hard to understand. The Attorney General's office sort of swooped in and said, we got to be in charge of this now. What's the latest of all that? I'm not even sure what the latest is myself, and I try to track everything pretty well. And what's your confidence level that we'll be able to keep pushing back against the woke world that doesn't like oil and gas?
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, there's an ongoing lawsuit, and the AG's carrying that now, and so I can't get into a lot of the deep minutia. But the legislature came out with a bill, like you said, that said the treasurer will kind of scout these guys out, and if they're bad actors, put them on a restricted list. And the first one on my list was BlackRock, and some of these the big five that you can hear nationally. They're almost household names now, and but they're not multi-trillion-dollar money managers for nothing, and they're not going to take it lying down. And some country boy in Oklahoma is going to put us on a naughty list, and they didn't take it real well. And they come in, with their lobbyists and people, and they put on a pretty good show, and they kind of got their pound of flesh out of us or out of me. But we didn't quit. We definitely have still continued to carry our message. Look, we're not trying to get on the opposite side of their woke out ideologies and try to out promote our side of it over their side of it. We're saying, no, that doesn't belong in the financial arena of fiduciary decision making for a portfolio.
Right.
I'm not bringing it up. You don't bring it up. And unfortunately, the judge said, well, Treasurer, if you're getting into this conversation, you're bringing it up, you got to quit doing that. And I'm thinking, I don't want to have the conversation. I'd like for both of us not to have this conversation, make them quit. And I don't think she could see really what was going on behind the curtains with them, and pretty much sidelined the bill and said that she was going to strike down the law, and it's on appeal. The Attorney General has taken that back over. I don't really know how to explain all of that. There was a time where I think there was a lot of things happening with him and some of the other executive agencies in the state that he took offense to them having their own legal counsel and just went in and started grabbing them all back up. Since then, a judge has ruled that he
court has said, no, you can't do that anymore.
Do that. I haven't really weighed in to pull mine back if he thinks he's willing to go in there and defend it. I actually asked him if he would take the case the first time it came up, and he told me he couldn't take the case and would get someone. And I said, well, if you're going to get one of your friends, I'd rather get one of my friends that I know and can trust. And I guess that didn't go over real well, and he took it first.
So let me get this right. You originally asked the AG to take the case, and he said, well, I'm going to take the case, but I'm going to outsource it to some other group. And that made you, who's responsible for all this, feel uncomfortable. So you said, well, in that case, I think it's best if the treasurer's office chooses who the legal counsel is going to be. Did I get that right?
Yeah, that's pretty close. I kind of use this tongue in cheek. It's when I don't let another man choose my weapon. I'd rather choose the people that's going to represent me so they're accountable to me and not accountable to somebody else if it didn't, So
you're a statewide elected official. Yeah, that makes sense.
Absolutely. And, I proposed that he would take it. And anyway, politics is a really funny world that it's hard to explain. And if you haven't really been immersed in it, it'd be hard for someone to understand. So anyway, you and I probably know exactly how that goes, but I don't want to burn a lot of your time getting into it. But I think at the end of the day, we'll prevail. We may not prevail in Oklahoma, but nationally, we're I guess you'd say we're whooping them all over the ring because they're on the ropes. They're dropping out of these alliances right and left.
Even Larry Fink and BlackRock walked out of the climate accords. Is that right?
Yeah, they walked out of one or two, but there's 5 of them, and they're still pandering to the ones that are left, so they can try to keep one foot on both sides of the fence, you might say. And when you go in and look and call them out on it, they don't have good answers, and that's kind of interesting. That we'll just kind of have to finish the process and hold them accountable.
There you go. Well, you're doing great, important work for the people of Oklahoma, and we're all lucky to have you in the office. Our friends with the Committee for Oklahoma Prosperity can gain a lot of insight by listening to this session. So we'll look forward to some great feedback. Thanks so much for spending some time with us today, everyone. We hope you have a happy and blessed day.
The Committee for Oklahoma Prosperity is advancing ideas and policy that create growth and prosperity for the people of Oklahoma.